You know, there are over 130 pyramids scattered across Egypt, just standing there, these silent giants, still holding so many secrets.
Uh-huh. And the documentary we're diving into this week actually called Egypt, the Richest Source of Archaeological Treasures on the Planet.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue with that, isn't it, when you look at these amazing structures?
It really is. And look, the sheer scale, the age, it can feel overwhelming. So our goal here in this deep dive is to kind of focus in.
Right.
We want to get at the very beginnings, like what sparked the idea for these iconic shapes. We'll do that by looking at key discoveries from recent digs.
Exactly. Think of this as your shortcut, basically, to understanding the foundations. We're not trying to cover everything about Egyptology here.
No, definitely not.
Instead, we're using that National Geographic documentary, Pyramids in King Tut, full episode, Lost Treasures of Egypt. It really followed the teams right there on the ground.
Yeah, fantastic access.
So our mission today, it's pretty clear. Uncover the inspiration for the first pyramid and the beliefs that shaped these incredible tombs.
Okay, so beginning at the beginning means we need to go to Saqqara. It's about 10 miles south of Giza.
Saqqara, right, the necropolis.
Exactly, the city of the dead. That's where pyramid building really kicked off.
And the key moment, the big one, is the step pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser. I mean, just imagine, over 4,500 years ago, they built the first massive stone building in the whole world.
It's just a mind-blowing leap, architecturally speaking. And the person behind it, Imhotep, Djoser's most trusted advisor.
Yeah, the architect.
Right. And what's really amazing is his background.
No, a commoner.
A commoner who became so important that centuries later, people actually worshipped him as a god.
What a story. And his big idea, technically, was moving away from mud bricks, which was the standard then.
The usual material.
And using stone blocks instead.
Yeah.
Plus the design. It's like he took those earlier tombs, the mastabas.
Right, those sort of flat-topped, bench-like structures.
Yeah.
With a burial chamber underneath.
Yeah, and he basically stacked them, smaller ones on top of bigger ones, creating that step shape.
And it got huge. Over 200 feet high. The tallest thing around at the time.
Incredible.
And switching to stone, that wasn't just about materials. It was a statement about permanence, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Power, legacy.
Exactly. Reflecting the pharaoh's ambition, wanting something eternal that mud brick just couldn't deliver. And you see the impact straight away. The documentary mentions 10 kings after Djoser copied his step design.
Wow, 10 of them.
Yeah, leading to this huge expansion at Saqqara.
Which naturally brings us to the hunt for Imhotep's own tomb today. Archaeologist Miroslav Barta. For 30 years, he's been searching for it in Saqqara. The documentary really captures that excitement, Finding his tomb could tell us so much.
Oh, definitely. And they had some promising early signs. They found a shaft, and inside,
Beer jars.
beer jar. Yeah. But crucially, they could date them right back to Imhotep's time. That kind of pottery is like a timestamp.
Okay, so that must have felt like they were getting close.
Exactly. But, archaeology is rarely simple, right? They hit major problems.
Like what?
The water table, it kept rising, flooding the site.
Ugh, digging in the desert and you're fighting floods. That's ironic.
It's a constant issue in Egypt, yeah. So, despite those promising jars, the burial chamber they eventually reached, it was open, looted centuries ago.
Ah, shame. So no definitive proof it was Imhotep.
No, unfortunately not. But they did find canopic jars inside.
Okay, and those were for the organs, right, after mummification.
Exactly. Used to store the mummified organs. So whoever it was, they were definitely high status. Important enough for the whole mummification process, which wasn't for just anyone.
Right, reserved for the elite. So still a significant find, even without the name.
Definitely suggests a very important person was buried there.
Now, the documentary also looked at something else really intriguing near Djoser's pyramid, this gigantic trench surrounding the complex.
Oh yeah, that thing is enormous.
Like over 130 feet wide and 65 feet deep, just massive. Archaeologist Kamil Karashevich was leading that investigation.
And the first thought, the obvious one, was that they dug out all that stone for the pyramid, right?
Makes sense. Use the material right there.
But as they dug deeper, things got more complex. It started to look like maybe it had more of a symbolic meaning.
And then they found, something unexpected. Human remains.
Yeah, a teenager and another complete adult skeleton.
Yeah.
Right there in the trench.
Wow. Okay, what did they figure out about them?
Well, the bioarchaeology showed signs of mummification, like the brain had been removed.
So proper burial rites?
But the burials themselves were really simple. No fancy coffins, no grave goods, which suggests they were buried much later than Imhotep's time.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It suggests that even centuries later, people saw this area as sacred. They wanted to be buried near Djoser's pyramid. It still had power.
That makes sense. The place held on to its significance.
Absolutely. They knew how important Imhotep's creation was. But then the trench story gets even weirder.
Oh.
In a tunnel connected to the trench, they found a big wooden harpoon inside a sort of cylindrical container.
A harpoon? Okay, that seems random for a burial complex.
Right. But here's the interpretation, and it's pretty compelling. The archaeologists think the trench, the tunnels, the harpoon, it's all a kind of 3D model
A model of what?
of the journey to the afterlife. The trench isn't just a ditch. It's a symbolic pathway, the path the king's soul takes to get to the heavens.
Oh, okay. Let me process that. So the harpoon, it's not for fishing.
Probably not. The theory is it's a ritual weapon.
It's for the king in the afterlife.
Yeah, for the pharaoh to, like, defend himself against dangers in the underworld, to make sure he gets through safely and achieves divinity.
Okay, that really shows how deeply their beliefs were baked into the actual architecture, doesn't it?
Totally. It wasn't just a building. It was functional, spiritually.
Which leads perfectly into the next part. The documentary shifts focus to later pyramids. Those of Pharaoh Unas, they first said Ibi, but corrected it, and Pepi II, built centuries after Imhotep.
Right. And Unas's pyramid, sadly, was pretty heavily plundered for its stone over the years.
Yeah, a common fate, unfortunately.
These later pyramids hold something incredibly valuable for understanding the beliefs behind all this. The pyramid texts.
Ah, yes, the inscriptions inside.
Exactly. Inscribed right onto the walls, dating back maybe 4,000 years. They give us this amazing window into their religious ideas, how they evolved from simpler burials to this complex cosmology about the pharaoh's journey.
And Cristel Alvarez was working on piecing together fragments from Unas's tomb. That sounds painstaking.
Oh, incredibly delicate work.
Right.
Like putting together a super old shattered puzzle where every piece matters. And then there's Pepi II's pyramid. Unlike Unas's, it was mostly intact. And it has the largest collection of these pyramid texts ever found.
Wow. Imagine finding that. What did the texts actually say? What kinds of spells?
Well, they found all sorts of spells, ritual sayings, basically designed to guarantee the pharaoh gets to the afterlife safe and sound.
Like a guidebook?
Sort of. One really interesting bit mentions a figure they first called the ferryman, but later identified as Nemti.
Nemti.
Yeah, a falcon-headed god. His job was to guide the dead king's soul through the dangers of the underworld.
So these pyramids weren't just tombs as we think of them. They were like spiritual engines.
That's a great way to put it. Engines designed to ensure the pharaoh's immortality, his continued rule in the next life. The texts were the operating manual, almost.
The instructions for the journey.
Precisely. The whole complex was a ritual site. For remembering the king, yes, but more importantly, for performing the rites needed for his transformation and ascent.
Okay, let's circle back to Miroslav Barta's dig near the Step Pyramid. Even though Imhotep's tomb itself remained elusive,
Right.
his team found something else interesting in a mastaba chapel nearby. Red-painted graffiti. Hieroglyphs.
And what was odd was that some were painted upside down.
Upside down. Why?
The documentary suggested it was just part of the building process. Like, workers marked the stones before putting them in place and didn't always worry about which way was up during assembly.
Huh. Okay. Practical explanation. Did they figure out what it said?
Eventually, yeah. They deciphered a name, Pedar, though later findings also mention Qatarware.
Peter or Qatarware. Okay.
Yeah.
And they needed more context.
Right. To figure out who this Peter guy was, they looked at inscriptions in a different pyramid complex, Sahir's. He was a pharaoh about 100 years after Imhotep.
And another archaeologist, Mohammed Ismail Khaled, was key here.
Exactly. An inscription there gave Peter's titles. He was a sculptor, and importantly, he was in charge of stone vessels.
Stone vessel, so a master craftsman. High skill level.
Absolutely. Clearly someone important, respected by Pharaoh Sahir.
And didn't they find a carving showing him at a royal banquet?
Yeah. Which is a huge honor.
Right.
Right. A direct reward from the pharaoh for his service. And part of that service, leading expeditions to get precious materials.
For decorating the pyramids, like fancy stones and stuff.
Exactly. Things like alabaster, granite, the materials used for statues, sarcophagi, decoration.
So Peter wasn't the first innovator like Imhotep, but he was clearly a crucial figure following in his footsteps.
That's the picture that emerges. Someone continuing that tradition of high craft, essential to realizing these monumental projects. And the fact he was buried near the step pyramid.
Tells you how important he was considered, his status.
Yeah, it speaks volumes about his contributions and how highly he was regarded.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. We've gone right back to the start, to Imhotep and that revolutionary step pyramid.
The first giant leap.
We've peeked into their beliefs about the afterlife through those fascinating pyramid texts.
Yeah, the spells, the journey.
And we've met Pitar, another key player, this master craftsman carrying the torch.
It really brings it together, doesn't it? That aha moment. These finds give us such a tangible link to the ambition, the innovation.
The faith.
The faith, exactly, of the ancient Egyptians.
Yeah.
You stop seeing the pyramids as just giant stone triangles.
Right.
And start seeing them as these incredible statements of human ingenuity and belief.
Yeah. And it really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? How did the ideas of people like Imhotep, like Pitar, how did they not only change Egypt's landscape forever, but also echo down through time?
Influencing other cultures, how we think about huge buildings, about death, about eternity.
It's just a powerful reminder, I think, of human creativity and the enduring power of the stories we tell ourselves about what comes next.